that there are people who are going to be chairing committees that frankly should be in jail rather than chairing committees. Mr. President, I want to ask you, let's allow the public protector to do her job, to table the report into allegations into Bosasa. Let's set up a parliamentary ad hoc committee where you can come and give your version of the story, and let's stop delaying. Let's get to the bottom of this and clean out corruption once and for all in South Africa today. If we are going to reform the state, we should have made cabinet much smaller. Instead, the president made it look as if he's cutting cabinet, introduced deputy ministers, doubled them up. I want to argue this case that we can reduce the state to 15 ministries, eradicate deputy ministers, and make sure money is available for the people of this country. The sixth reform I want to table is in fact that we must extend property ownership to millions of dispossessed South Africans. Our history is such that too many were dispossessed in both urban and rural. Therefore, let's give our citizens the privilege of being able to own, the right to own title. The right so that black and white South Africans must be able to access the benefit of owning private property as an economic asset that allows them to transfer wealth to future generations. While we're at it, let's give shareholding to younger South Africans so that they can transfer wealth, so that one day we can say we did break the plan, the back of an apartheid plan where our people cannot transfer wealth from one generation to the next. The seventh reform I want to say, Mr. President, is that if we want to keep South Africans safe at home, in rural communities, on farms, let us give the South African police into a well-run, well-trained, highly professional crime-fighting units. Let us give this to the hands of the government in the provinces. Let us reform policing so that provinces can run it. Hand them over to provincial governments. Fellow South Africans, if we reform, we can begin a way to the future of South Africa. 10 years from now, I want to see a South Africa that looks completely different from today. We can have unemployment. DA governments are already forging ahead and have begun innovating, modernizing, and growing cities. That's where you govern, where we govern, you'll find unemployment is the lowest in the country due to our obsessive focus on city life. Today, Stellenbosch has already got an ecosystem in the most productive in Africa, employing over 40,000 people. More than Lagos, more than Nairobi combined, rightly earning the title of Africa's tech hub. In terms of renewable energy, 8 out of 10 municipalities in the Western Cape have already got laws in place for independent solar energy generation. And most of them want to sell energy back to the grid. This is what a city-led economic growth plan would look like. That's why we are taking this government to court to ask that they must give the rights to the city of Cape Town to be able to generate energy for citizens here. And we will do it to all the cities. In terms of education, the DRN Western Cape investment into the future of e-learning has already seen over 1.4 billion rands invested in the past 5 years. It's already delivered over 1,160 refreshed computer labs, 28,870 devices for learners, and 11,000 resources for our online portal. To date, 70% of all teachers are trained in e-training, and over 80% of the schools are connected to free internet. The Western Cape's retention rate from grade 10 to 12 is the highest in the country. And in healthcare, already we know that more of our citizens are connected online, and we keep 13 million of citizens online records to make sure we give effective healthcare. Fellow South Africans, we've already started working. We are working. So I want to appeal to you, Mr. President. I want to appeal to all South Africans. Let's work together to achieve this plan. I have pledged my support to assisting you when you've needed support, when you build South Africa. I want to ask you to help the places where the DA is in government so that we can continue the work that we have. I would urge you, Mr. President, let us free up small businesses to create work. Let us sell off our beleaguered SOEs. Let us modernize and de-unionize our children's basic education. We have a plan, and let's begin to work on it. I want to say this. Every single day in this country, I draw inspiration from the teacher who shows up in the classroom despite what is happening. I draw inspiration from the healthcare worker who goes to a hospital. I draw inspiration from the businessman who, even when confronted with profit and profit losses, still keeps people employed. And in this month, I think we need to draw inspiration from the young people of 1976. When they looked out and they realized that they could not spend their days dreaming, they decided to take to the streets and fight for what is rightfully theirs. Mr. President, time for talking is over. It is time for us to act right now. I thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honorable, the Minister in the Presidency.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, Deputy President of the Republic, David Mabuza, honorable members of the House, distinguished guests in the gallery, fellow South Africans. You know, Honorable Maimane speaks as if we are still in an election campaign. He seems to have forgotten that the reason why we had the president of the ANC delivering SONA was precisely because their priorities and manifesto were rejected by the people of this country. It is the manifesto of the governing party, returned to govern, that was accepted by our people. That's why, President, you were standing here last week and made the State of the Nation address. Therefore, if Honorable Maimane and the parties in this House want to join us in growing South Africa and making South Africa a better place to live in, our manifesto becomes the compact that we must speak to. Because that's the manifesto that the people of this country have chosen. We invite you to join us, Honorable Maimane and your party. Fellow South Africans, I would like to express our most sincere gratitude to the people of South Africa for bestowing upon us the responsibility to lead this beautiful nation. Once again, we reiterate the oath of office we took that we will serve our people with honesty, sincerity, and diligence. I also extend a word of gratitude to our movement, the African National Congress, under the capable leadership of President Ramaphosa, for entrusting us with the responsibility of implementing the vision of growing a better South Africa for all of us. I am grateful to our predecessors, those who remain part of the cabinet, as well as those who have resigned from Parliament. We are taking the baton from you with humility, and we remain committed in our pursuit of the collective dreams and aspirations of our people. Honorable members and fellow South Africans, the attributes of a developmental state which we strive to build include its ability to improve the human capital base of the economy, reducing inequality in both per capita income and expenditure, sufficiently modernizing its public service, embedding such a state in the communities, and fundamentally transforming the economy, as well as being an entrepreneurial state. Our strategic thrust led by the President is outlined in this State of the Nation address reflects our commitment to achieving the status of a developmental state. As a country, we are governed by a range of values and principles, and these lay a solid foundation for building a thriving and inclusive economy and a stable society. The 25-year review we have conducted demonstrates quite clearly that we have done very well in the expansion of the social services to the majority of our people across all parts of the country, including in the rural areas. The challenge remains the transformation of the economy, which has not performed well. The review identifies the structural elements of the economy that remain unchanged and which continue to undermine our economic growth efforts. These include the persistent challenges of spatial injustice and lack of access to land and assets for the majority of our people. It also points to continued lack of competition in the ownership of the economy, underdevelopment of the small business sector, which allow greater participation in the economy. It is this analysis that informs our priorities. Our election manifesto, together with the collective voice of our people, whom we interacted with as we crisscrossed the length and breadth of the country during the election campaign. The President reaffirmed the NDP 2030 as our lodestar and our vision approved by all parties in our society and in this House. While progress was slow, particularly on the economic side, we confirm our intention to achieve our NDP targets to address the challenges of inequality, poverty, unemployment, and economic growth. The plan for the continued implementation of this vision was eloquently and succinctly articulated by the President in the following words, I open quotes, as South Africa enters the next 25 years of democracy, in pursuit of the objectives of the NDP, let us proclaim a bold and ambitious goal, a unifying purpose to which we dedicate our resources and energies, I close quotes. All our intervention strategies and strategic programs are guided by this overarching plan. The 7 priorities announced by the President emanating from our electoral mandate will play a catalytic role in achieving a number of NDP targets in the next 5 and 10 years. Government departments will be measured according to their performance in achieving the following priority areas: economic transformation and job creation, education, skills and health, consolidating the social wage through the reliable and quality basic services, spatial integration, human settlement and local government, social cohesion and safe communities, building a capable, ethical and developmental state, and a better Africa and a better world. Honorable members, let me remind you that the purpose of the State of the Nation address is for the President to report on the status of the nation and outline the overall strategic direction and priorities. This is followed by this debate, where more information is provided on key themes of the President's speech. The purveyors of the misguided narrative that the President's SONA was slim on detail are disingenuous and very economical with the truth. The President made specific mention of sectors that can turn our economic fortunes around, elucidated on areas of great potential, including stimulating local manufacturing and promoting the Buy Local campaign, developing new markets in agriculture and agro-processing, and increasing international tourist arrivals to 21 million by 2030. He went on to say, I open quotes, drawing on our successes in the automotive sector, we will implement master plans developed with business and labor in industries like clothing and textile, gas, chemical, plastic, renewable, and steel and metal fabrication sectors, I close quotes. Furthermore, The various sector ministers' speeches, which are now scheduled for the week of the 19th to the 17th of July 2019 in the precinct of Parliament, will provide even further detail of the program for implementation. All these platforms allow for debate and engagement at the appropriate level of detail until the process is concluded. Those who claim that the SONA is all about dreams do not understand that all major revolutions worldwide began with an idea. A people without dreams, without vision and purpose, is a people with no future. It was the dreamers who gathered in Mangaung in 1912 and formed an organization that would wage a resistance struggle against colonial and apartheid oppression, informed by a dream of a free South Africa, which we all now enjoy. In this epoch in South Africa, we are fortunate to have a great visionary in the caliber of President Ramaphosa as the head of state. He is a big dreamer and a big doer at the same time. The new smart city that the president talked about is our collective dream. It will be followed by decisive action wherein we invite young, innovative minds who are ICT savvy to share their ideas on the design and architecture of such a future smart city. It is our fervent view that such a smart city must be located in one of our rural provinces so as to disrupt the colonial and apartheid spatial patterns. In his previous SONA in February this year, the president made a commitment to reduce the number of ministries and departments in order to save costs and rationalize the structure of government. At the start of this sixth term, the president indeed finalized the rationalization by reducing the number of ministers from 38 to 30 and reducing the number of departments by 5. It is also the president's constitutional right and prerogative. Let me repeat this. It is also the president's constitutional right and prerogative to appoint and disappoint ministers and deputy ministers. Those who wish to exercise this right must first win an election. I just hope the EFF is listening. The successful reduction of government departments is a very important achievement, which will result in more efficient and integration of programs for better results at a lower cost to government. For the new medium-term strategic framework for 2019 and 2024, which includes resourcing, social compacts, and accountability mechanisms, we have a limited set of priorities emanating from the electoral mandate. The new implementation paradigm is a radical shift to a comprehensive framework inclusive of resourcing, integration of all public sector institutions, social partners, accountability mechanisms. This informs all levels of government planning through integrated planning framework. It will put more emphasis on social partnerships, resources, and skills deployment by the private sector and government. It allows for a clear line of sight for the President, Cabinet, and Parliament. The 5-year NDP implementation priorities will be spatially referenced in accordance with the National Spatial Development Framework and will be monitored through an implementation delivery model based at district level. Honorable members and South Africans, the broad outline of the medium-term strategic framework, including the 5-year NDP implementation plan, was discussed in detail with all premiers and ministers at Cabinet Lekgotla and are being tabled at Provincial Executive Council's Makgotla as we speak. The Lekgotla decision was that in a month's time, all departments and ministers must finalize their 5-year implementation plan, commitments, and reprioritization, as well as resource allocation. The NDP 5-year implementation plan forms the basis for departmental strategic plans and annual performance plans. The structure of government, including cabinet clusters, ministerial and technical implementation fora for coordination and implementation, will be streamlined for better results and effective delivery. Similarly, early in this 6th Parliament, we will be presenting the proposed integrated planning framework, which will ensure better integration across all levels of government. The Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, DPME, which I'm privileged to lead, has spearheaded a public-private sector growth initiative, PPGI, to promote economic growth and create jobs. In this regard, I want to thank my predecessor, Minister Dlamini Zuma, who was part of the starting of this initiative. The private sector has committed investment, as articulated by the President, of 850 billion in 43 projects in over 19 sectors of the economy to create 155,000 jobs in the next 5 years. Government has committed to prioritize the elimination of growth inhibitors or binding constraints to ensure successful implementation of these projects. As government, we further commit to a robust community engagement and consultation program through the various Izimbizo programs involving the President and ministers, and will include this in the ministerial performance agreements. We shall ensure that government departments prioritize payment of their debt to each other. Debt to municipalities, debt to state-owned entities, and the payment of service providers within 30 days. We shall revive Operation Masakane to encourage our communities to pay for services they receive and restore the culture of payment. We are broadening our monitoring system to include frontline service delivery monitoring, citizen-based monitoring, community-based monitoring, and more effective use of the presidential hotline. All this will be linked to our program of action and its biannual review weeks linked to performance assessment of ministers, deputy ministers, and directors general. A capable state requires effective, coordinated state institutions with skilled public servants who are committed to the public good and capable of delivering consistently high-quality services while prioritizing the nation's developmental objectives. We will ensure the appointment of the head of the public administration as espoused in the NDP 2030 by April 2020 to spearhead the professionalization of the public service and move to making appointments of heads of departments more permanent to promote stability in the public service. Developing a capable state requires commitment in overcoming corruption and lack of accountability, and this needs a strong political will. And Mr. President, you have that in abundance. Sound policies and active citizenry. We shall also ensure improvement in financial performance management and audit outcomes for all levels of government with targeted increase of unqualified and clean audit outcomes in the next 5 years. Similarly, we shall ensure the promotion of ethics and integrity management through the public service and private sector and enhance capacity of law enforcement agencies to fight corruption, crime, and state capture. We must congratulate the President for achieving a 50-50 split in gender representation in his executive. Gender mainstreaming must be replicated across all spheres of government as we continue to build a non-sexist society. It remains one of the imperatives that we will closely monitor in the public service. Madam Speaker, allow me to invoke the profound words of our iconic writer, the late Prof. Eskia Mpahlele, whose centenary we celebrate this year. I open quotes. Everybody who's willing to work and has a nation-building vision rather than aspirations for a sectional power base should be allowed to come forward and contribute ideas and hands. I close quotes. With those words, I call upon all South Africans to join hands with us in pursuit of a better and more prosperous South Africa. It is a new dawn. Let us rise to its promise.
Thank you,
On
sir.
behalf of the ANC and millions of South Africans who voted us into power, I fully support the President's State of the Nation address.
Thank you. The Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Chair of the NCOP. Comrade President, let me also salute the red benches of the EFF 53 Battalion, led by the EFF Deputy President Floyd Shibambo and Secretary General Godrich Kadi. Fellow South Africans, we want to first send our deepest condolences to the families that lost their loved ones in an accident that claimed 24 young lives in Limpopo. Ame moya ya bona e robale ka khutso. We stand here to express our revolutionary gratitude to more than 1.8 million voters. And at the center of them are the security guards, domestic workers, farm and mine workers, petrol attendants, the youth, professionals, students, and those who voted for the EFF. You have not wasted your votes. We heard your cries and we are here to champion your interest without failure. We vow to you that we shall never cease to ensure that Parliament remains a house with teeth that bite, particularly at incompetent, mediocre, and corrupt fat cats who are permanently sleeping on duty and only wake up on payday or the day of stealing. As expected, we are, of course, starting today to hold the executive accountable. We have been convened here for the whole week to debate what was supposed to be the State of the Nation address by the newly elected president, a man who held the ambition to be president for almost 3 decades. Indeed, this is our duty, except in this case, we really have no SONA to debate. What we have is a misguided, incoherent, contradictory, and proven to be futile ideas mixed in a bag of fantasies. For a man to be hyped up by the entire local and international media only to pitch up extremely low is tragic. We were abused here during the election campaign that saw people like Oprah Winfrey rented and sneaked into the country in the name of the Global Citizen Festival to come and tell us how Madiba wanted you, Mr. President, to be president. After your speech, we now ask ourselves as to what did Madiba see in you which we can't see. Your speech didn't inspire confidence and hope amongst the poor, young, and old people of South Africa. Your own benches here were not moved at all. Hence, they couldn't even sing a song in salutation of your tired speech like they normally do when they feel revived. They didn't hear Mkombandlela. They didn't know, and they still don't know what is expected of them from your speech. You didn't recover any of the lost votes. If anything, those who voted for you are now regretting because they wasted their votes on a president without a plan. You have no new ideas on how to break the country out of a colonial and apartheid legacy of underdevelopment, poverty, landlessness, and unemployment. You don't know how the collapsed public health system, which led to dysfunctional hospitals, are going to be fixed. The schools have become war zones with teachers and learners living in permanent fear because they were failed by their own government. NSFAS is not buying study material, paying rent and fees for the students, yet the fed salaries of senior managers is paid monthly without fail, and no one knows as to how this problem is going to be resolved. Mr. President, you couldn't provide us with a solid vision with regard to the continent. You couldn't speak to the African continent despite the ongoing massacre in Sudan, instability in Libya, the economic crisis in Zimbabwe, which led to huge unemployment and currency crisis, right-wing terrorism in Kenya, and the ongoing occupation of Western Sahara by Morocco. You couldn't render a message of solidarity and hope to the Palestinian people who live under apartheid Israel and the people of Venezuela who are fighting against imperialism. You fail to tell us what is it that you will do differently from how the ANC has handled the economy over the past 25 years. The central tenets of your message remained trapped in the neoliberal conception of development that has failed to work in South Africa and the whole continent. You are not even brave enough to repeat the manifesto promises that you made across the country during the campaign for elections. Among these is an urgent question of land expropriation without compensation. Somehow, your speech was limited to 4 points: fighting corruption, fighting crime, and asking black people to pay electricity, and getting 10-year-olds to read to understand. Beyond this, it was a confusion about jobs to be created. At one point, it was 155,000 jobs in the next 5 years, then it was 2 million jobs in 10 years. Yet the National Development Plan speaks of a different target, 10 million jobs by 2030. In addition, your own job summit facilitated agreements with private business to hold back on retrenchment and help create over 200 jobs. Capital is not creating any jobs. They are doing the opposite, retrenching workers, demonstrating that you are not this captain of industry you are portrayed to be. Your influence and command on private capital is over-exaggerated. This entire confusion explains why the president resorts to fantasizing. So after being stuck for 4 hours in a train in Soshanguve, the billionaire president was so traumatized that he now fantasizes about a bullet train from Messina to Cape Town. Before the much complicated bullet train, Mr. President, you need to get the Soshanguve train to work and take people to work on time. Comrade President, when you got struck in a train, all of us were excited that now the president knows the realities that our people are subjected to. You come here and say nothing about that experience. You come here and not tell us that since you have seen with your own naked eye, this is the plan on how you're going to fix that problem of trains in South Africa. You said nothing about transport to a point where your Minister of Transport became so frustrated and he had to quote you on your dream of a bullet train because he couldn't find anything relating to transport in your speech. But most tragic is the ignorance and disrespect shown to the conference resolutions of your own organization simply because you personally do not agree with them. Mr. President, we urge you to recall that conference resolutions are binding. Even Nelson Mandela, with famous and well-celebrated stature, he still recognized them as a mandate from the membership which must be implemented. So let us remind you that on page 31, resolution 15 under the economic transformation section, the resolution reads, expropriation of land without compensation should be amongst the key mechanisms available to government to give effect to land reform and redistribution. On page 32 of your own resolution, resolution 29, of the Economic Transformation section reads, it is, however, a historical anomaly that they are private shareholders of the Reserve Bank. Conference resolves that the Reserve Bank should be 100% owned by the state. This is the same document which includes the election outcome of the leadership, including your own election as a president, which shows that the election of leaders is as important as the resolutions on policy. We were taught as young leaders in the Youth League by Kgalema Motlanthe that you must respect your own decisions or risk rendering the collective structure that took them irrelevant. He also taught us of the necessity you have to translate your conference resolution into a program of action. But the document in your own organization called the Eye of the Needle, a document about the caliber of leaders that must lead your movement, we are told once a decision has been taken on the basis of the majority views, it binds everyone, including those who held a contrary view. You will therefore recall that because of this principle, although Chris Hani was very angry at the decision to suspend the armed struggle, once a resolution was affirmed by the higher structure, it was binding. He had to go around the country and explain it to others as if it was his own view. Mr. President, in 2018 SONA, you came here and said, guided by the resolution of the 54th National Conference of the governing party, the approach to the land reform will include expropriation of land without compensation. In January this year, you repeated and said, we will support the work of the Constitutional Review Committee tasked with the review of Section 25 of the Constitution to set a provision of expropriation of land without compensation. Now that you have been elected, you turn your back on the promises you made to the electorate because you undermine our people like that. Last week, you have completely retreated on expropriation of land without compensation and nationalization of the Reserve Bank. But let us warn you, if you do not respect the resolution of your own conference, imagine what message you are sending to those who did not want you to be the president. You are saying to them that the decision or the outcome of you being elected as a president is not binding since all other decisions taken in the same conference are not binding. What is the state of our country today, President, is unemployment, which has reached a new high level of 27.6%, meaning over 9.9 million young people are unemployed in South Africa. We must create jobs, because when you say you are going to create 2 million jobs in 10 years, you are simply saying to almost more than 7 million young people that you are not going to get jobs for the next 10 years. That's why you are saying 2 million. An honest president would have said, even if you elected me, the 7 million of all of you will not get jobs because I've got no plan to create jobs. Comrade President, it must be made clear that the crisis in higher education will not be resolved, particularly under the new leadership of the Department of Higher Education. It has got no capacity. It has demonstrated before that it doesn't have the interest of black child at heart. Let us warn you that this free education you have promised our people is not being delivered. There are no proper libraries. Our children are not receiving the learning material because NSFAS doesn't have capacity to give those children learning material. No access to food, no accommodation, and that is what constitutes the life of our children today. So, Comrade President, we don't need an ample free education. We need a real free education where there will not be registration fee, where all children who qualify to get a seat at tertiary level will only be required to produce their matric result, and that will earn them a seat at that level. We must make it very clear, Mr. President, that it is not going to happen in South Africa, the issue of resolving inequality, if we do not resolve the land question. We must therefore warn you that if you do not expropriate land without compensation and return it to its rightful owners, the democratic project remains in a permanent threat. Our people are going to engage in an unled revolution because they will be fighting for what rightfully belongs to them. We said here in warning the ANC that we cannot use the land question to encourage people to vote for us. It is an emotive issue, and when we speak about it, we must be meaning it, not what you did to the electorate. We will never resolve the social ills in our society if we do not resolve the land question. If we do not change the patterns of property ownership in South Africa, white people will continue to think that they are superior because they own the means of production. We make no apology. Neither are we ashamed to repeat the call that the land must be expropriated for equal redistribution. The first and the most practical step towards creating quality life for our people is by giving them the land. We must not retreat in our endeavor to amend the Constitution to allow the expropriation without compensation. Mr. President, we will not win a fight against corruption if the president is involved in allegation of money laundering. We want the president to come clear, that to explain and take the country into confidence as to who are the people who donated money in the CR17 campaign and what do they stand to benefit. I'm not even sure if your party policy allows that you must set up a fund to finance a campaign if you want to become this or that in your own party. We need the names, not leaked documents, Mr. President. You ought to call all these trustees and say to them, they must give you a report of who donated money and what are the expectations of those people. We don't have an intention, none whatsoever, to remove you as a president because your people have elected you democratically. But if you are going to come across as being a constitutional delinquent, we'll be left with no option but to engage in an impeachment process against you. We want you, President, where a mistake was committed, to take full responsibility and announce which practical steps you are going to take in correcting those mistakes. We don't see anyone in your party, if we were to be removed tomorrow, who can replace you. Otherwise, we'll all be in a disaster. So we are in a disaster now. We don't want to be in a worse disaster. Please help South Africa by taking it into your confidence. Make sure that you lead by example. You are a human being. You will commit mistake. Where you have committed a mistake, you must come out and confess and say, South Africans will decide my fate. Don't be the most dishonest person beyond the one who came before you. We thought we were in a worse situation. We don't want to be in a more worse situation than we were before. We want a president that is ethical, a president that is honest, a president that opens up and say, how do we fix this mistake which was committed in my name? President, we must tell you that people are poverty-stricken now. People are unemployed now. People are landless now. People are being raped now. Crime is too high now. They are not dreaming about it. That is the reality of their life. Stop dreaming. Implement programs that are going to change their lives. How can an ordinary man walk into a shop holding 100 rand in his pocket with the power to buy a cold drink, arrive at the shelf and say to a shopkeeper, I dream of buying a cold drink, when you've got the power to buy a cold drink? You've got no luxury to dream. You are a president. You are an implementer. You've got the power to make things happen. You want a bullet train? Stop dreaming. Announce how you are going to do a bullet train. If you don't know, ask Paul Mashatile. He spoke about monorail at some point in Gauteng and demonstrated how it can be done from Johannesburg to Soweto. We were still traumatized by Gautrain. We said we don't want monorail. You come here worse than Paul Mashatile. You just say bullet train from here to there. You don't tell us how it's going to be done. You want to create a city. Stop dreaming. Tell us of the land where you want to create a city. How long will it take you? How much you need to create the city? You've got the power to do so. You've got the power to fight corruption. Don't be scared of corrupt individuals. They will not remove you. You are a president now. Don't worry whether you'll come back or not. Take a decision now. You've got the power to take the decision. Stop dreaming about taking decisions when you've got the power to take a decision. When you appointed Honorable Pravin against Public Protector's report, you took your powers away because you said his review suspend the remedial action. You can't even remove a deputy minister from now onwards. If a public protector says, these are the remedial action against a deputy minister, that deputy minister will lodge a review of that remedial action. You'll be stuck with a corrupt deputy minister because Pravin made it difficult for you to be a president. Stop dreaming, take a decision, wake up.
On a point of order, Chair.
Order, members. Chief Whip of the NCOP.
Thank you, Chairperson of the NCOP, Comrade President and Comrade Deputy President, honorable members. The ANC I'm a member of has never assigned anyone out of his structures to be his spokesperson. No one has a right to anoint himself as a guardian of ANC traditions and his conference resolutions. As a tried and tested mass party of the revolution, with accumulated fighting experience of over 107 years, the ANC has never been found wanting in finding solutions to its own challenges, the problem facing society. As a disciplined force of the left, we have never chosen the rosy path of shortcuts, easy solutions to complex problems, neither pandering on the popular sentiments with unrealistic solutions, and we will resist that temptation even today. The overwhelming majority of the people of South Africa voted in the national and provincial elections, and they voted the ANC and the President Cyril Ramaphosa at the head of it, thus reaffirming their confidence to his leadership and uninterrupted service to the cause of the revolution in South Africa. Honorable Chair, this State of the Nation address takes place after the renewal of the democratic mandate of the African National Congress to lead the process of fundamental change and transformation in our country. It has captured the fundamental aspiration of our overwhelming majority of our people as articulated in the 2019 election manifesto of the ANC. Contrary to some false narrative peddled by some in this House, the priorities identified by the President in his State of the Nation address represent continuity in change in the uninterrupted efforts of the African National to build a better future for all. These priorities are anchored on the vision of the Freedom Charter, the 1989 Harare Declaration, the Ready to Govern, and other policy positions of the African National Congress adopted by various conferences. Our 2019 election manifesto and government 25-year review has detailed our success stories over the last 25 years and the challenges that lie ahead. As a leading party of the revolution, we have drawn many hard lessons on the choices we have made, their implementation and successes and failures. This has emboldened us to be more focused, rigorous in our implementation and monitoring of our plans as mandated by overwhelming majority of South Africans. We'll do this drawing from the accumulated experience of the last 25 years, which has enriched our insights and wisdom on fundamental tasks of governance. Our experience of governance cannot be matched by any party in this House. Although we will continue to humble ourselves by welcoming constructive contribution of every party that shares our vision on fundamental aspects of transformation. As the President has pointed out, we do this mindful of the harsh global and domestic economic conditions, which continue to limit our capacity to accomplish our strategic goals at the scale and tempo of our own choice. This calls for greater efficiency and prudence on the management of our limited resources. Chairperson, we are further emboldened by the President, who has demonstrated resilience and capacity to translate our policy priorities into action for building a capable and ethical state without fail over the last 16 months of his presidency. The President has established various inquiries to look into the governance of some of our critical institutions, like South African Revenue Services, the National Directorate of Public Prosecution, the Public Investment Commission alongside Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture. These inquiries continue to make serious breakthroughs that has restored the confidence of our people. The establishment by the hawks of the National Clean Auditors team in municipalities continue to disrupt the comfort zone of rent-seeking and corrupt patronage network that has been looting municipal finances. Whilst we respect the fundamental constitutional principle of presumption of innocence until proven guilty by a court of law, we salute these actions by the security establishment for the recent spate of arrests of municipal officials suspected of corruption and fraud across the country. This is indeed a new dawn in action, Mr. President. As the debate takes place on the 25th anniversary of constitutional democracy, it imposes immense duty upon us to pause and take stock of the lessons of the past and efficacy and efficiency of the architecture of our democratic state in fulfilling the strategic task we have set ourselves. This we should do not out of intuition, but on the basis of the correct lesson of the past 25 years. Chairperson, the abiding lesson of the past 25 years is that the people and the people alone are the decisive factor critical for the victory of the national democratic revolution. It is against this background that the ANC, from 1994 till to date, has always been paying high premium on the welfare and the needs of our people. As demonstrated in the 25-year review, we have integrated the fragmented education system by creating one non-racial and non-sexist education department with one curriculum for all. Today, South African children are not denied education, access to education because of their socio-economic conditions through such policy intervention, such as no fees paying schools, national school nutrition program, and scholar transport. And it is in this regard that we celebrate the success of Gauteng and Free State Province for over a number of years for being leading provinces, even with the matric results in our country. Our social wage has expanded significantly over the last 25 years and today covers over more than 17 million beneficiaries. The provision of free healthcare services to the poor, children and pregnant women is among key policies that has restored the dignity of our people. Today, South Africa stands counted amongst few countries with improved life expectancy and best practice model on the issue of HIV and AIDS pandemic, despite the challenges that remains. The recent passing of anti-monopoly legislation by Parliament will go a long way in deepening the radical economic transformation by ensuring that our economy not resides in the hands of the few elites. We reaffirm our commitment to industrialization and sustainable path towards sustainable jobs. It is in this regard that townships such as Dimbaza, Mdantsane, Botshabelo, Kwakwa, Kwanyamazane, and many others will benefit through massive manufacturing that will produce finished products. According to our constitution, South Africa is a single sovereign democratic state with 3 spheres of government that are constituted as national, provincial, and local government that are distinct, interrelated, and interdependent. The Constitution further enjoins that these 3 spheres of government to cooperate with one another in advancing national development agenda. In pursuance of this constitutional imperative, our government has established robust systems and structures of intergovernmental relation. The efficacy and effectiveness of these systems and structures can only be measured by the impact they make in forging the integrated cooperative governance and mitigating the current uneven development and capacity amongst provinces and municipalities. The National Development Plan is very instructive on the dual challenges of duplication, fragmented planning across the 3 spheres of government, which most documented research attributes to poor service delivery and development. Mr. President, this therefore makes it more compelling for the 6th administration to pay high premium on integrated cooperative governance system. Our groundbreaking efforts in this regard will surely ensure that there is no child who daily walks more than 5 kilometers to school, no indigent family on the housing waiting list for more than 10 years, no money allocated for housing is returned to Treasury because the municipality has not allocated sites for building and other challenges associated with fragmented planning. Chairperson, our system of provincial and local government are located at the cold face of service delivery, development, and participatory democracy. Over the past years, our system of provincial and local government have undergone fundamental changes and reconfiguration to adequately respond to the development challenges facing our communities. Among the catalytic economic infrastructure development that has been built in our townships, including transport infrastructure, building roads in pursuance for local economic development. The 2010 Football World Cup hosted by South Africa will go down the annals of our history as one of the decisive moments in the spatial distribution of world-class commercial sports infrastructure to all 9 provinces. This has increased tourism attraction of most of the provinces beyond Gauteng, Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. Chairperson, the accomplishment of these high-level, world-class infrastructure projects have demonstrated the capacity and potential of provincial government and municipalities as critical agents of change in the transformation of development and economic landscape of our country. There are many exciting lessons to learn from township economic model by Gauteng province with all its challenges. Key among these is a township economy is feasible and can be achieved. To do this requires bold and conscious action. This should include leveraging our development finance institution to have a conscious bias in investing in township economy, translating our commitment to localization of production, procurement of goods and services into concrete plan and reorientation of our spatial development framework to consciously locate more business on commercial sites in the township. Key to the clarion call by the President, which flows from the National Development Plan, is the partnership among different sectors of society, our communities and government in pushing back the frontiers of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This partnership presupposes structural dialogue, reflection and collective action on the identified priorities. As a systems of our democratic governance located closer to the communities, the provincial and local government are best placed to occupy forward trenches in the facilitation of public participation. Chairperson, this should not only be limited to legislative process, but should also include the monitoring of the impact of government policy to our communities. We must also remodel our public participation framework to be more exciting and inspiring, to draw meaningful involvement of the widest possible section of our communities. The more the disjunction fragmentation between three spheres of government, the more capacity of the democratic state to fulfill its task is weakened. This point is succinctly captured by the ANC conference resolution, and I quote, "The more we build a developmental state, the more we create conditions for integrated cooperative governance system. And the more we strengthen the cooperative governance system, the more we create conditions for a developmental state," close quote. The story of our last 25 years is the story of a foundation built to create an integrated cooperative governance system, both at an executive and legislative levels of the state. The NCOP taking parliament to the people is a single most strategic intervention where three spheres of government are brought together under one roof in conversation with our people. The key question that South Africans will seek an answer to is how braced are these strategic initiatives to monitor the strategic tasks of the 6 administrations as outlined in your State of the Nation address, Mr. President. This is the critical question that should inform planning of parliament and legislatures in the 6th democratic parliament. The planning should reorientate the legislative sector to be more activist and people-centered as
Time has
articulated
expired.
in the strategic vision of parliament. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Buthelezi, to be followed by Honorable Grunewald.
Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Speaker, Your Excellency the President, Your Excellency Deputy President, Honorable Ministers and Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members. As we sat in this august house last week, we were reminded of 2 historic speeches. The first is Dr. Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, which he delivered in August 1963. Although rather than the American dream, this was deeply rooted in the Chinese dream. The second speech that came to mind was former President Obama's oft-repeated, "Yes, we can." More than 70 times the president said the words, we'll do this, and we'll achieve that. By contrast, the words "we have" were uttered only 7 times. So there is a very gaping chasm between what has been done and what the government intends to still do. 2 things were sorely lacking last Thursday, Your Excellency, the now and the how. Mr. President, you asked us to imagine an impossible future, and you told us that there is nothing we cannot achieve if we work together. This is a bold dream. Unfortunately, even in the senior leadership of the ruling party, there is a failure to work together. The result is conflicting statements on crucial issues, such as the mandate on the South African Reserve Bank. Of course, we all want the country you dream of, Your Excellency. But do we dare dream of building smart cities tomorrow when today we can't even get the basics right? The picture you painted of hardship and poverty is familiar to all of us. The picture of bullet trains and cities with the integrated ICTs is possible to imagine, but is it possible to achieve? I don't mean hypothetically that I'm not making judgments on our worthiness as a nation or on our potential. I'm talking nuts and bolts, rands and cents. I asked during the February State of the Nation debate, where will money come from to achieve these grandiose plans? We're already borrowing just to stay afloat. Where will the money come from to do all these things, Mr. President, you say we will do? Since I asked that question, South Africa has experienced a 3.2 drop in GDP growth for the first quarter. We're in deeper trouble now than we were then. We need more than hope, Mr. President. We need economic growth, and we need it now. A recent editorial in the Financial Mail magazine opened with the opposite line, and I quote it, "It's been a difficult week to be South African," unquote. Well, I say, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, for many South Africans, every week is a difficult week. If all our goals have a timeline of 5 or 10 years, you won't be here, Mr. President, to answer them, to answer for them. Your Excellency, so what now? What about tomorrow? You talk about a 10-year plan for economic growth, but we don't have 10 years. And how do we know that things will really get better and not worse? We need solutions now. We know how heavily government is relying on foreign investment as a lifeline for our economy. So we welcome the news that 250 billion rands worth of projects are in the implementation phase. We welcome that, Mr. President. But our enthusiasm slips through when we remember that 230 billion rand is needed by ESCOM. We really are chasing our own tails. Long before blackouts, we knew that a stable and sustainable electricity supply is vital to our economy. Why then was ESCOM allowed to sink to this level of crisis? When the warning bells sound, we must take heed. The warning bells have sounded loud and clear for the SABC. Financial crisis threatens another imminent blackout. Not the lights this time, but the news. We need to respond appropriately. When key people suddenly start resigning from state-owned enterprises, when chief financial officers talk about day zero, and when bailouts are costing more than our economy can afford. This is not the time to dream. Mr. President, you spoke about difficult choices and bold steps about doing things that won't please everyone, things that will stretch our resources and capabilities. We all accept that this is needed. But what are those bold steps and difficult choices? How, for instance, will we have, if not eradicate violent crime in the next 10 years? Coming as I do from KwaZulu-Natal, where violent crime is a daily reality, I'm eager to know what exactly is planned and how it will be expedited. One can only hope that the minister will unpack this for us when he delivers his budget speech. Whatever is going to be done differently, it will demand that corruption first be eradicated from all ranks of law enforcement, so that bribery, abuse of power, failure to act, and dereliction of duty will no longer plague our efforts to secure justice, security, and peace. It is genuinely possible to eradicate violent crime, eliminate hunger, push child literacy to 100%, employ 2 million youth, and get our economy growing faster than our population. If these things are genuinely possible within just 10 years, why is it taking 25 years to figure out how to do it? Does government really have it figured out now? Your Excellency, we cannot wait for 10 years. Fortunately, we won't have to, because situated right in the presidency is the Department of Performance, Monitoring, and Evaluation. This department must now set quarterly measurable targets based on the 10-year plan and report not only to the president, but to the country through Parliament on whether these targets are being met. We all have lofty ideals. When it comes to delivering the dream, however, it falls on honorable ministers, honorable deputy ministers, and director generals, and the many officials in government administration to do so. It's not about the ideas, it's about who delivers on them. When we have officials, even at the highest level, failing to comply with Public Finance Management Act, our loftiest dreams will come to naught. There is a simple question South Africans are asking. We all heard it loud and clear when we traveled the length and breadth of this country. The question is this: where are the arrests? This question has not been answered. Why have no arrests been made when so much evidence of corruption has been brought into the public spotlight? Corruption cannot be relegated to a few lines in a speech. It must be dealt with as a foremost priority. Thus, the IFP will continue our call for the establishment of an integrity commission dealing with corruption as a Chapter 9 institution. Your Excellency, the IFP thanks you for giving us the responsibility of chairing the Standing Committee on Public Accounts in the 6th Parliament. We are confident that the Honorable Mr. Nkululeko Hlengo will fulfill this responsibility with the same integrity that our party is known for. Mr. President, the IFP is not shy of giving plaudits where plaudits are due. We are pleased to hear you say that municipalities must be properly supported. The fact is that local government remains a lower priority in the government's books. This is a result of a centralized system of government which the ruling party sought during constitutional negotiations. We recall that as our chief negotiator, Mr. President. The IFP, on the other hand, sought decentralized governance from the ground up. We wanted to empower local and district municipalities to become the drivers of economic development, service delivery, and social justice. We wanted strong local government so that the people would genuinely determine their own destiny. The dreams you espoused on Thursday, Mr. President, were national dreams, overarching dreams. But the dreamers, of course, are local people. We need local solutions. Your Excellency, I personally would like to thank you for raising the issue of the rising HIV infection rates, particularly in young women. I lost my children to AIDS, as you know. I'm a committed activist for eradicating this disease. That is why I wear this red label ribbon every day and for the rest of my life. Years ago, the first national leader to speak about losing a child to AIDS was myself. And then after that, the Honorable Nelson Mandela, our former president, did well. We tried to actually remove the veil of silence. Mr. President, we have asked that in the national interest, all parties offer support, insight, and practical solutions. That is the hallmark of the IFP. Please be assured, sir, that we'll do just that, and that we do it because, like you, we love South Africa.
Honorable Provincial.
Can we just get the time correct, please, Chair? I don't have 1 minute. Okay, I've got some extra, fine. Agbare voorsitter, dear u, Honorable President, there's nothing wrong to have dreams. In fact, I do believe that real political leaders must have dreams. But then we must say to each other, it must be dreams to last forever. That's the difference. Chairperson, every time I delivered a speech from this podium in previous SONAs, congratulating the Honorable President with his election, I said that the Freedom Front Plus and its supporters wants to build South Africa. We want to build a better future for all. In your campaign, Honorable President, you said that Stellenbosch, that you wish you could tie the white young people of South Africa to a tree, preventing them from leaving South Africa. But did you ever ask yourself, why do the white people and the young people of South Africa leave South Africa? It is because they don't get jobs. And they don't get jobs because of affirmative action. You say that you want to utilize their skills and their expertise. The fact of the matter is you cannot do it. Because of affirmative action, they have to go and seek jobs at other places in the world. And yes, the world reap those expertise from the people and the young people of South Africa. Still, you discriminate against the young white people of South Africa. Your own youth employment scheme. White young people cannot participate in it because they are white. If you go and look, for instance, what your Secretary General Ishmagashule says, he is still blaming the white people of white monopoly capital. His argument is it is still because of the white people that we cannot have economic growth. Chairperson, with great respect, that is a kick in the teeth of those people who really wants to build South Africa. Do you want to recognize them? Do you want to enslave the young people and the white young people of South Africa? Because if you think you can enslave them, you are completely wrong. If you look at your MEC for Education in Gauteng, always blaming Afrikaans schools for his own failures and using it as a smokescreen instead of attend to the schools who are real problems. Do the ANC have a problem with my mother tongue language of Afrikaans? Because that is what Lesotho says. But I didn't see, Honorable President, that you repudiated him. I said before, do away with black economic empowerment. And can I say, I'm supported by black academics like William Gumede. You know, in the election time, when I put in some petrol in my car, the attendant said to me, I'm going to vote for you. And I asked why. And he said, you are quite correct. When it comes to black economic empowerment, it is only favoring the political elite. So, I want to come and say you want to build the economy. How can you build the economy if you have a construction mafia stopping 74 construction projects, demanding a 30% shareholding in the company? How can you build the economy if more than 110 engineers in the construction business left South Africa because of this crime elements in South Africa? I want to say to you today, if you don't curb these criminal activities, you will not be able to build the economy. More than 16 trucks burned over a weekend. The people that keeps the economy rolling, but they burn them and people lose their lives because of crime in South Africa. Chairperson, you will have to ensure that if you want the economy to grow, that you curb the powers of the unions. You know, and everybody in South Africa know, when it comes to the SOEs in South Africa, you have to retrench people. But the unions come to you and the ANC and says, you will not do that. And that is part of the problem. You will have to curb their powers. You will have to revise labor laws in South Africa. Chairperson, I come to crime. And I want to ask you, why is it so difficult to publicly condemn farm murders in South Africa? In South Africa, we have black farmers, we have colored farmers, we have Indian farmers, we have white farmers. The food you had this morning when you had breakfast, you must thank the farmers. Everybody who's going to have lunch just now, thank the farmers. Chairperson, ek wil vir die agbare president sê, verlede jaar ongeveer hierdie tyd, was daar aanvalle gewees op moskees, een in KwaZulu-Natal en een in Mamasbury. U tree onmiddellik op. U benoem onmiddellik 'n presidensiële komitee van die minister van polisie, van verdediging en van justisie. Ek wil vandag vir u sê, 'n plaasmoord is nie 'n moord op 'n individu nie. It's not only a crime against an individual, it's a crime against the community. It is the women and children who pay the price of a farm murder, where they are tortured, where they throw boiling water down their throats, where they take hot irons burning the women, where they force a 12-year girl to see how her mother is raped. That's torture. But still, you do refuse to publicly condemn farm murders. I appeal to you. It's simple. And I will say to you, Honorable President, I will invite you to a funeral of a farm murder, and you invite me to any other funeral you wish to. Lastly, Chairperson, I want to say there's one outstanding matter. And that is Section 235 of the Constitution that deals with self-determination. It also determines that national legislation have to determine what happens with Section 235. There's an accord between the Freedom Front, the African National Congress, and the government in 1994. Chairperson, I appeal to you that we meet, that we take this step forward to ensure that Section 235 of the Constitution, which deals with self-determination, taken forward. Ek dink dit is die enigste artikel in die grondwet wat bepaal dat nasionale wetgewing wel geskryf moet word wat nog nie geskryf is nie. So in daardie opsig het ons ook 'n grondwetlike verantwoordelikheid en plig. Agbare President, ek wil afsluit. You know, there's a song that says, it's actually the green, green grass of home. It's about this prisoner who sang and he thought in his song, I want to touch the green, green grass of home. And then he says, and when I wake and I look around me, I was surrounded by 4 great walls. And yes, I then realized that I was only dreaming. Because he's a prisoner. Honorable President, you are a prisoner of the African National Congress. Break away from that. Then you can save South Africa. Then you can save the economy. I thank you.
We will then move over and have Honorable Mkachwa, who will be followed by Honorable C. Labuskaghni.
Mr. President, honorable members, today, 65 years ago, thousands of activists gathered in Kliptown to lay out a vision for a South Africa that we today inherit. The vision, aspirations, and dreams of our people were documented in what became known as the Freedom Charter, the backbone of the Constitution which guides this House. Comrade President, as a member who is a young black woman, I stand on the shoulders of the women who played a role in drafting the Freedom Charter, your Ruth First, your Dora Tamanas, your Albertina Sisulu, your Beata Lipmans. Comrade President, I stand on the shoulders of the first women to form part of the first parliament of our young democracy. I can only but imagine the suffocation they endured in that boys' choir of an executive. Today, as we young women join them on these benches, I draw strength from their resilience. In fact, I stand their resilience. Murangeri Watiko, it is with no doubt that under this democratic South Africa, the future of the children of this nation can only get brighter. South African youth are doing amazing things in various spheres of society, both locally and internationally. Just look at Shoma Josie as recent achievement. However, allow me to share that my activist colleague, Dr. Stembile Mbete, shares a story of her conversation with a 9-year-old girl whom when she asked, what are your dreams and what do you want to be, she said, Sizobona. Allow me to share Ms. Shira Kala's conversation with a 20-year-old young man at Rosebank Mall, whom when she asked what his dreams were, the boy responded, I have no dreams, let me first survive tomorrow. President Ramaphosa, we must ensure that the gloom that hovers over parts of our country does not strip away young people from their right to envision, to dream, and imagine bright, healthy, meaningful lives. The process of envisioning one's future should not be a privilege. Comrade President, we continue to build our nation and design the social fabric of our society. Sleepless nights we must have, unsettled by the realities of these two young people and many like them. We must khawuleza for our inability to address some of the socio-economic challenges of young people in our country will lead to the death of imagination among some young people in our country. Our inability to ensure that young people, through the attainment of knowledge and skills, are active participants in our economy will attribute to the social decay in our society. How do we build a nation when the future of the country fails to imagine their role within it? The key to nation building, as Amika Cabal says, is to rid our land of every noxious influence of oppressive culture. How is it, Mongameli, that whilst you speak of growing South Africa through a social compact which requires contribution of various parties through sacrifices and trade-offs, others speak about slanding terug. Rarig arbare leerders. Slaan terug to what, Mongameli? To a time when the efforts of the masses of this country to fight the land would bear no fruits. And die voel las land terug mna. The above-mentioned privilege, Mr. President, is the very same privilege that underpins various hate crimes in our society. The ANC has promised in its manifesto to finalize the legislation before Parliament aimed at preventing and combating hate crimes and prosecutions of persons who commit those offenses. In line with your call to implement Masikauleze Mongameli, because this legislation will mean that no hate crime goes unpunished. Any abuse based on gender, race, religion, disability, and albinism will be legally and decisively dealt with. And we must tell you that homophobes in our society must be aware of the fact that any abusive behavior towards the LGBTQIA community will face legal consequences. Taking into consideration the demographics of this country and whom the life expectancy of many is reliant on, women are a very fundamental part of building this nation. As we build our new nation, we are guided by the preamble of our constitution that reads, we aim to establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Gender-based violence is one of the greatest plagues of our time. Our women are not safe, our queer bodies are not safe, the night and the day scares us, the cities scare us, and so do the lallies, public spaces, our homes, universities, and schools too. Is there any space for us, in fact, in the society? And if there is not that space, if there is not space, we must, with the Shambok, which is the laws of this country, address those issues. President, you speak to the establishment of the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Council. As we acknowledge the launch of the Gender-Based Violence Hearings and the Sexual Offences Court in the 5th administration, as we work towards social connectedness and building an intersectional society, we must include the representation of young women and gender non-conforming bodies in the structures that will lead the processes and institutions. However, we must also acknowledge, President, that the scourge of patriarchy won't be solved by solely increasing the representation of women in an oppressive system, but rather the dismantling and breaking down of any institution and societal construct that entrenches patriarchy. A seat at the table does not mean you are off the menu. Honorable Figile Masiko, whip deployed by the governing party to the Committee Women, Youth, and Persons Living with Disabilities, together, let us work to whip patriarchy out of the society. Let us whip it real good. Honorable Lamula, our constitution is considered a world-leading document. We must conceptualize and design a world-leading response to gender-based violence. As per our manifesto, we must capacitate and equip the police and the court system to support survivors and gender-based violence and sexual assault. President, as we increase the visibility of police, we must ensure that our people do not live in fear of our police, nor are they triggered by the police. Our police must not assimilate the intolerance of the apartheid police, when overseeing protests, the police must not assimilate the apartheid police when overseeing protests, nor must they regurgitate sexual harassment towards victims entering police stations. Honorable Cele, appreciating the contribution to youth employment through the training of the 5,000 young people into the police, We must ensure that we harness a blooming police force whose actions will resonate with a democratic South Africa through programs like conflict negotiation, mediation, and resolution training and rehabilitation programs. Core to the student protests of 2015-2016 was nation building. Our generation reminded society that you cannot build a nation whilst others are left behind academically and economically. Out of that came great strides in the sector of higher education. However, sadly, consequence of our call for free, quality, and decolonized education, talented young South Africans like Kanya Tageshe find themselves behind bars. Others are charged, expelled, suspended, emotionally scarred, and politically despondent. Comrade President, the unconditional release of Kanya and all others must be prioritized by your administration. Comrade President, South Africa being one of the greatest leaders of the African continent, we endorse your call for a world-class visa regime. Best academic minds on the continent must collaborate with our academics in Univen, in WITS, and all our institutions. Our children must go to the great kingdoms of Mali and Ghana to learn our majestic and glorious history, and young African learners must come here to learn our history. And LGBTQIA community members in other countries who do not feel safe must feel safe in South Africa. President, we want you to finalize the legislation on language in our schools. African languages must be taught in schools, they must be institutionalized. More importantly, we need to create societal value of our languages. As VC of UCT, Prof. Bakeng says, in South Africa, someone can speak 9 official languages but be deemed illiterate or not fit for employment. Comrade President, we create value in our languages by ensuring that odokotela emdantsane speak and diagnose our patients in isiXhosa. Teachers must be able to teach foundational topics of mathematics in more than one language. Fellow South Africans, our world is changing. Technologies of the fourth industrial revolution have the potential to be great equalizers of our time. However, they may also drive the greatest concentration of wealth and deepen inequity. We need to, fellow South Africans, as we work to build our nation in this 4IR, ensure that the 4IR does not happen to us, but that we inform how it unfolds in our country. Allow me to lobby you, Mongameli, to use our education system as a niche to achieve what you intend to achieve in building a national democratic society. I heard my good friend Noman Ngqongqoshe at the pre-SONA debate with youth quote me in saying that we must use schools to propagate and harness a special type of South African that will grow to be charged with the desire to drive out all these isms that burden our society, racism, sexism, and classism. Let's work from the words of Sankara, who implores citizens to become active agents in the transformation of the society instead of remaining spectators. President, masisheshe sigeze, si implemente, you have set out the line of march, Mongameli. We are lobbied and we commit ourselves to executing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Labuskachne. Honorable Labuskachne to be followed by Honorable K.R.J. Mishwe.
Agbare voorsitter van die Nasionale Raad van Provinsies, agbare president, lede van die parlement, mede-Suid-Afrikaners. Die president het in sy rede verwys na sy droom vir 'n nuwe era. Agbare president, daardie droom kan net verwesenlik word indien die ANC drasties van koers verander. Andersins herinner dit my aan 'n ou bekende liedjie wat sê, "Dreams are good friends." Die werklikheid van die hier en nou is egter dat 10 miljoen Suid-Afrikaners elke oggend wakker word met die wete dat hulle nie geld of kos het vir hulself en hulle gesinne nie. Waarskynlik ook nie 'n vooruitsig het om werk te kry nie, maar steeds moet voortbeer om 'n wetsgetroue en 'n verantwoordelike landsburger te wees. Ons jong mense wat wel die geleentheid kry om hulle self te kwalifiseer met kennis en vaardighede, geen sekerheid het dat hulle 'n werk gaan kry nie en baie van hulle die land verlaat. Die kwesbare persone in ons land wat op toelaas moet lewe, nie meer weet wat die begrip bo die broodlyn beteken nie. Die wat wel 'n werk het, daagliks armer word en hulle bekommer oor die veiligheid van hulle pensioenfondse indien hulle een het. Vakbondleiers, die minderheid van werkers in ons land verteenwoordig, maar hulle meestal veg vir hul eie politieke voordele. Die wat kapitaal het om te belê, gevolglik na geleenthede buite Suid-Afrika kyk. Mr. President, the ANC's strive for a developmental state through the new growth path would have created 5 million jobs in 2020. The policy statement on developmental local government aimed to build capacity to enhance service delivery in local communities. However, in the NCOP, we witnessed various interventions in local governments due to a lack of capacity or political motivations. In 2017, President Ramaphosa's New Deal for Jobs, Growth and Transformation set a target of 3% growth in 2018 and 5% in 2023. Costs would have also been cut through a reformed ESCOM, as well as greater use of renewable energies. Efficient use of the public purse and structural systems are, however, prerequisites for these policies to successfully contribute to economic growth. Our state-owned enterprises, central to development and growth, however, distinguish themselves in weak management, poor governance, and unsustainable bailouts, with the result of widespread state capture and the direct impact on our economy. Agbare President, slegs 'n stabiele groeiende ekonomie wat werksgeleenthede en welvaart skep, gerig steun deur bekwame regeringsvlakke, kan hoop en vertroue vir die toekoms bied. In die Weskaap, waar die DA reeds sedert 2009 regeer, kan ons wel nie teenstaande oorkoepelende negatiewe ekonomiese omstandighede bewys lewer dat ons innoverende beleide en planne gebaseer op 'n markgerigte ekonomie 'n positiewe invloed uitoefen op ons inwoners. 'n Paar voorbeelde hiervan is dat die Weskaap 'n 14% laer werkloosheidssyfer as die res van die land het. 508.000 nuwe werksgeleenthede is geskep, wat dui op ongeveer 'n 4-dubbele groei oor die afgelope dekade. 'n 72% suksessyfer in landbou grondhervormingsprojekte teenoor 'n 10% suksessyfer in die res van die land. Sedert 2009 is R500 miljoen spandeer op die ondersteuning van 357 grondhervormingsprojekte. R80 miljoen word op 'n jaarlikse basis vanaf die privaat sektor hiervoor bekom. Die Weskaap gee die toon aan met die skep van energiesekerheid. Sonkraginstallasies het toegeneem vanaf 18 megawatt tot meer as 110 megawatt, hoofsaaklik deur besighede. 18 munisipaliteite maak ook reeds voorsiening dat energie teen vergoeding teruggevoer kan word in die kragnetwerk. 'n retensiesyfer van 63% vir graad 10 tot 12 is bereik met die 2018 matrikulante teenoor die minder as 50% syfer in die res van die land. Not only did the DA-led Western Cape make strides in cutting unnecessary regulations for businesses, we introduced the Premier's Advancement for Youth program, providing 750 matriculants with jobs and training every year. Furthermore, we rapidly increased the delivery of basic services to above 96%. In die Weskaap word daar jaarliks inspeksies op 150 polisiestasies uitgevoer. 'n Kommissie van ondersoek is ingestel wat gelei het tot die promulgasie van die Weskaapse Gemeenskapsveiligheidswet, wat die instel van die kantoor van die polisie-ombudsman moontlik gemaak het. Tans bedreig die toename in misdaad, veral geweldsmisdade en die gepaardgaande ontoereikende hulpbronne van die polisie, die algemene veiligheid van alle inwoners, skole, besighede en selfs toeriste. Suid-Afrika word tans beskou as een van die 20 onveiligste lande in die wêreld. Agbare President, om jou beste te probeer is soms net nie genoeg nie. Dan moet gedoen word dit wat nodig is. Aldus die dispuut wat deur die Weskaap verklaar is om polisieering ook as 'n provinsiale funksie in te stel. 'n Professionele en gemoderniseerde polisiemag op provinsiale vlak is tans essensieel. Agbare President, alle Suid-Afrikaners verstaan op hierdie oomblik duidelik wat Churchill bedoel het toe hy gesê het, ek haal aan, I no longer listen to what people say, I just watch what they do, sluit die aanhaling. Behavior never lies, Action speaks louder than words. Meneer die president, ons vra aksie vir veiligheid en ons vra aksie vir ekonomiese groei. Ek dank u.
Thank you. Ndade Misho, arumkla wena ndade.
Deputy Speaker, Mr. President, one of the few statements President Ramaphosa made during the State of the Nation address that the ACDP warmly welcomes is his reassurance that government will not interfere with the constitutional mandate of the Reserve Bank, which is to protect the value of our currency in the interest of balanced and sustainable growth. He stated that, and I quote, "Today we reaffirm this constitutional mandate which the Reserve Bank must pursue independently without fear of favor or prejudice. The ACDP encourages the President to be resolute in his defense of the independence of the Reserve Bank, to ignore those who are calling for its nationalization. This being said, the ACDP did not appreciate the President's dreams. To many South Africans, these are all dreams that belong to the pre-1994 era. Even before the democratic dispensation of 1994, most South Africans living in informal settlements dreamt of living in modern brick houses that would give them a sense of dignity. Students dreamt of studying in universities of their choice, graduating and finding competitive employment. The reality is that after 25 years of democracy, these dreams have not materialized. So to hear the President talking about these dreams as if they were something new was a huge disappointment. Another major letdown was to hear the President say, and I quote, if we are to ensure that within the next decade, every 10-year-old will be able to read for learning, we will need to mobilize the entire nation behind a massive reading campaign, close quote. The President knows full well that when we were 10 years old, we could read with comprehension. Yet the President dreams that it will take another decade before all 10-year-olds can read with meaning. One of the many reasons why most 10-year-olds cannot read with comprehension or write legibly is because the Department of Basic Education has not prioritized basic reading and writing skills. The ACDP calls on government to abandon their wicked plans to introduce new textbooks on comprehensive sexuality education that will teach 9 and 10-year-old pupils about masturbation and oral sex. Comprehensive sexuality education does not have the best interest of African children at heart. Government should instead focus on ensuring that our children are equipped with mathematics, science, robotics, and basic computer skills in addition to reading and writing skills. The ACDP applauds the proposal to introduce subjects like coding and data analytics at primary school level. Deputy Speaker, the President also said he is committed to building an ethical state in which there is no place for corruption and plundering of public money. If he is committed to this, the ACDP would want to know why are certain cabinet ministers that are having allegations of corruption hanging over their heads appointed. We believe that the President's goal of building special cities.
Ndate kabumani babi yawo ifedile nako. Mhlekazi ela kuthuba.
Molweni, honorable members, President and Deputy President, aswabulisi kodwa wona masela. President, indeed, to turn South Africa around, what this country requires is a compelling vision for the future, a comprehensive plan, and unrelenting implementation, as well as a team to make sure that the implementation of that plan does take place. We do indeed give you credit that at the very least you do have a vision, but what you delivered in the SONA last week was not a comprehensive plan of how to turn the situation around. We acknowledge that, for instance, you are saying that the National Development Plan would be a critical plan going forward as a strategy on how to reignite growth in South Africa. We, however, find this as a contradiction because a number of proposals you made are about direct intervention or interventionist policies in the South African economy. Now, if you consider the National Development Plan, it's a neoliberal document that centers around trickle-down economics and unfettered markets. You need something more aggressive, a strategy that is going to anchor around the industrial plan of South Africa. A typical example is that South Africa faces its worst unemployment rate, especially among youth. If you were to read different sources, others would put it at 50%. You said over 50%. Others would actually put the figure at 57%. If you were to consider the narrow definition of the unemployment rate is 27%, and the expanded definition is 36%. The issue here, President, is that if we were to address not only the unemployment crisis and the poverty problem in South Africa and extraordinarily high levels of inequality, you are going to need to think outside of the box and not try to use ANC policies that have failed to create jobs over the past. So an industrial strategy is critical to this issue, and we'll outline it shortly as to what we are. The other question which is important, President, is that let us talk briefly about the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank and say the debate currently as it ensues in public is misguided. It conflates a number of very related but slightly different issues. One, you have ownership of the central bank, which is an ideological discussion. The second one is discontent with the implementation of monetary policy, which is inflation targeting, right? And its tendency to overreact in times when inflation shoots up. The third aspect of this particular debate is to say the mandate of the central bank as captured in section 224 of the Constitution. 224 subsection 1 in particular deals with the issue of price stability. The other one there in that section 224 of the Constitution, subsection 2, deals with better coordination between monetary and fiscal policy, which is what has not been happening in South Africa. So in order for us to have a more nuanced debate on this issue, we need to understand the different and the various levels in which this matter operates. Other issue which is important, President, when
Honourable Member, your time has expired. You must learn to keep to your time. Honourable Ramokgopa.
Deputy Speaker, Honourable President, Honourable Deputy President, esteemed members of the 6th Parliament, fellow South Africans. In entering this debate, we take great counsel from the instructive piece penned by Brent Filson titled, "In Leadership, Dreams Are the Stuff That Great Results Are Made Of." In this piece, Filson posits that, I quote, "A dream embraces our most cherished longings. It embodies our very identity. We often won't feel fulfilled as human beings until we realize our dreams. If leaders are avoiding people's dreams, if leaders are simply setting goals, they miss the best of opportunities to help those people take ardent action to achieve great results," close quotes. Having been galvanized by the compelling vision of the President, Gauteng Province, which accounts for a third of the country's GDP, ranks as Africa's 6th largest economy and is the 26th largest global city region, is poised to cement its unassailable position as South Africa's principal economic driver by mounting the most comprehensive response to the social conflict in this country in support of SONA. Deputy Speaker, in the context of Gauteng, the creation of new cities refers to the remaking of decaying industrial and historic towns, the in-situ development of light industrial manufacturing, office and retail activities in existing dense human settlements, the remaking of towns such as Vereeniging, Vanderbijlpark, Nigel, Krugersdorp, and Bronkhorstspruit into smart integrated spaces weaved into an urban conurbation called Gauteng City Region will be achieved by the 6th administration. The remaking will be characterized by crowding in public infrastructure and services such as schools, clinics, police stations, libraries, and accommodation of public social services, buttressed by residential densification of the core, supported by a modern road network that promotes mass public transport that is integrated, safe, reliable, efficient, and affordable. This remaking will be further undergirded by the expansion of broadband coverage and the fostering of black industrialists in the renewable space. Deputy Speaker, the focus on seizing value chain opportunities in manufacturing through special economic zones is a key intervention to increase investment that facilitate labor-intensive growth and increase exports to foster a positive trade balance. Gauteng will, advance the realization of Tshwane Silverton SEZ conception in the next 12 months. The SEZ will encompass Mamelodi, Eersteres, Nelmapias, which are classified amongst the poorest areas of the Tshwane corridor. The full delivery of the completed infrastructure will yield a total production of 5.2 billion rands and is projected to create over 19,000 jobs during the construction phase and 2,055 permanent jobs. In addition, Gauteng government will also aggressively pursue the expansion of the OR Tambo SEZ through the development of infrastructure to accommodate pipeline of investors for phase 1 and phase 2, focusing on agro-processing, pharmaceuticals, advanced component manufacturing, and tertiary metals processing, including mineral beneficiation. During the operational phase, it will yield over 13,000 jobs across the two phases. The GDP contribution of both phases is estimated to be in the order of magnitude of 2 billion rands. Deputy Speaker, moving beyond the contours of popular expressions, Gauteng will make definitive strides into the realm of Industry 4.0. The success of the fourth industrial revolution is predicated on the availability of reliable, high-speed, affordable, and universal internet access. To this end, Gauteng will expand wall-to-wall broadband coverage while taking bold steps of ensuring last-mile connectivity becomes a reality across all historic township areas, which will facilitate internet access to thousands of poor to middle-income households in the province. We do this acknowledging that the maturity of internet ecosystem has the potential of growing GDP by up to 1.5%. Gauteng will accelerate the development of the innovation hub into the continent's most prolific innovation real estate, a space that has the necessary and cutting-edge innovation infrastructure and ecosystems that accommodate and encourage fast growth of future sectors and new technologies to be harnessed and commercialized. This will be done through the development of the remainder of 66 hectares in collaboration with the private sector. This will see us developing solutions and skills for the new economy. At the more basic level, the Gauteng Department of Education will accelerate the rollout of schools of specialization aimed at preparing young people for the future design of work. Madam Speaker, Gauteng is determined to ensure the resilience and prominence of SMMEs and cooperatives as the mainstay of South African economy. This will be achieved through the upstream value chain capture of Gauteng's big-ticket spending areas of housing and roads. This approach will facilitate the creation of women and youth-owned manufacturing and production of the primary road construction inputs of asphalt and aggregate, housing construction primary inputs of bricks and cement. The success of this identified champion manufacturing will be premised on the guaranteed offtakes by the Gauteng government. The location of the manufacturing plants will be deliberate to give effect to township revitalization program by locating in the underutilized industrial parks of Garankuwa, Vereeniging, Randwest. In advancing the local content accord, the province will implement the promulgated regulation of 75% local content threshold and further designate additional sectors and products in line with the provincial procurement budget. On the issue of agriculture, Deputy Speaker, the dynamic and complex urban space that is Gauteng lends itself to smart and precision primary agricultural production and the associated value chain. Agriculture is the highest employment absorption capacity of any sector with relatively low levels of barriers of entry. Gauteng commits to commercialize 53 black farmers across the 5 primary commodities of grains, horticulture, piggery, poultry, and red meat. These already identified farmers are projected to generate a combined gross annual turnover of 5.3 million rands, and their market access will be facilitated by the completion of 5 township hubs and 12 agri-parks to the tune of 720 million rands. The commercial farmers will be concentrated in the regions of Sidibeng and West Rand. We are confident of generating over 20,000 employment opportunities through this bold initiative. Deputy Speaker, in the spirit of the Gauteng City region, the provincial government is determined to build cooperation and solidarity across the three spheres of government to achieve better alignment and synchronization in meeting our ambitious targets. In addition, strides are being made to create a competent, agile, responsive Gauteng government. Further, Gauteng will enter into a social compact with all key stakeholders aimed at committing to these bold interventions of meeting the desire of our people to be happy. In addressing the overall capacity of the state, the province will, 1, enhance joint planning with all spheres of government as well as SOEs, provide support to municipalities, particularly in the districts and local municipalities, through synergies in rolling out sectoral and economic programs, and strengthen collaborative measures with accrediting and standard bodies to enhance manufacturing capacity as well as market access. Deputy Speaker, we are under no illusion that the road ahead will be free of potholes, but we draw inspiration from the wise counsel of Anatole France when she asserts that, I quote, "To accomplish great things, we must not only act, but we must also dream. Not only plan, but also believe." Thank you very much. Thank you.
Honorable Chirwa.
President and the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, Commissars and Fighters, Deputy Speaker, President, I stand here on behalf of the EFF for the very first time to respond to your stale, empty, and meaningless State of the Nation address. Today, 25 years after the attainment of political freedom, the face of poverty, of landlessness, unemployment, homelessness, of poor health, of abuse, is still largely black. It is young and is most likely women. In your address, you only mentioned this identity once. You, Mr. President, have sold your soul to the captains of the industry, who are wholly white and are men. In return, you have made it your mission to sell dreams to the people on whose ticket you now occupy your office. While you are dreaming, sir, black youth are unemployed or languishing in jail because of your failure to secure their future. Black grandmothers are raped daily with under 2% chances of ever finding justice. And black people in general are still landless. They do not have the luxury to dream as your white-gotten wealth allows you to. I'm infuriated by your tone-deaf attitude to thousands of lesbian women subjected to corrective rapes and facing their tormentors in the streets because our criminal justice system cannot protect those who sex differently. Your government, Mr. President, is responsible for many and the most heinous of crimes. You jailed Kanya Kageshe, you jailed Boinkosi Kanyile, and are complicit for the brutal murders of Benjamin Petla, of Pongani Matonzela, just because they asked for a free education that you promised them when they were still toddlers in 1994. You have over 1 million students across all universities, but you can only accommodate just under 130,000 students. Where must the rest stay?
Member, hold on.
Without any intention
Honorable
to build
member, Honorable Chirwa, Honorable Chirwa, when you are spoken to, you stop speaking. Yes, Honorable member. What are you raising on?
Deputy,
press the button there.
Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
The Speaker on the podium said the President is complicit in murder.
Yeah.
I think that is unparliamentary.
Yeah, it's sustained. It's correct. Honorable member, withdraw that statement. Honorable member, withdraw the statement. You listen to the presiding officer.
On a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
What's your point of order?
She never said that. She said
Honorable
that
member?
your government is complicit in murder.
No.
There's a
Honorable-
court ruling about affirming that saying here in a joint sitting.
Honorable Shivambo?
Because when it was said by the commander-in-chief that the ANC government killed...
Honorable
Dr. Malekane,
Shivambo?
that was affirmed by court, that is permissible speech.
Honorable Shivambo?
But also it's out of tradition.
No, Honorable
to
Shivambo?
disrupt maiden
You are
speeches.
wrong. You are-
That house, that chairperson...
Honorable member?
It's out of order. You must allow...
Honorable Shivambo?
Honorable Naledi to
Honorable-
complete
Honorable
the address
Shivambo?
now.
Honorable Shivambo, you are wrong. Honorable Chirwa, withdraw that statement.
On a point of order. On a point of order, Deputy.
What's your point of order?
Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker. We hope...
What's your point of order, sir? You keep quiet, honorable members. You keep quiet.
Chief Whip, you see
allow
Deputy
your
Speaker
member
has
to
started
speak.
what he did.
Honorable member, go ahead.
Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
On two bases, we call a point of order. One, a maiden speech cannot be interrupted, and that you have allowed. And secondly, Deputy Speaker, where there is no certainty and there is a dispute about remarks and utterances in this House, in the best interest of this House to flow and the debate, refer it to Hansard and allow the poor speaker to continue. Don't be disruptive as you were in the past
Honorable
fifth
Deputy
Parliament.
Speaker,
And
on a
now
point
you
of
are starting
order. On a
again.
point of order.
No,
Honorable
Honorable
Deputy
Gadi,
Speaker.
please
Can
take
we
your
be
seat.
saved from you?
On a point of order.
Honorable,
Deputy
no,
Speaker.
can I make a ruling here, please? Honorable Chirwa, withdraw that statement because it is out of order. And I plead with you to do so, please. Withdraw the statement.
On a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
No, I have ruled on this. There's three of you.
You must ask her if she said it or not. You cannot say she must withdraw. She has not confirmed to have said that.
Honorable
she
member,
did not confirm that. You must ask her.
Honorable member.
Stop being emotional, man.
No. Honorable member, I have sustained the ruling. I have heard the member, and I'm asking her to withdraw.
I mean, it is not a lie that
No, honorable
Benjamin
member,
Phehla
honorable member,
and
you don't
Bongani
do that.
Madonsela were killed
Honorable member,
fighting for free education.
honorable member,
It is not a lie.
I'm going to switch off this mic. You are going to have to get off the podium if you are not prepared to withdraw. You withdraw.
Let's do this.
Hold on.
Withdraw.
Honorable,
We'll deal with this one later.
Honorable member, Honorable
Withdraw
Shivambo.
for now. We'll deal with it.
Honorable Shivambo, you are not a presiding officer. Take your seat, honorable member.
I
Withdraw the
withdraw,
statement.
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you.
Without any intention to build new universities or expand the capacity of the current universities and TVETs, where do you want all these learners in South Africa to go? I will also take this time to remind you and your colleagues, Mr. President, of Thandi. Thandi is the black girl born in 1992 that Trevor Manuel used to illustrate her positionality when he presented the IMF-imposed neoliberal NDP during his time as Minister of Planning in 2011. The NDP has failed to locate Thandi. Today, Thandi is excluded.
Honorable member, what are you raising, honorable member?
Thank you very much. A point of order, the conduct of members who come to Parliament in terms of the gallery. The former member who's sitting up there, who's taking pictures, who is not supposed to be in the house.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Honorable members in the gallery, you are welcome, but please don't break the rules.
Deputy Speaker.
Go ahead, honorable member.
Deputy Speaker.
Allow your speaker to proceed.
On a point of order, don't allow these people who are suffering from jealousy to disrupt this young, brilliant black woman from delivering a speech. This is a maiden speech.
You are disrupting
This
her
is
yourself.
a maiden speech, Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
Can
and
you please give her a chance?
And you are, no, honorable member.
You're jealous, man.
Take your seat.
She's outshining you.
You are out of order. You are out of order. Honorable members, allow the member to speak.
On a point of order, Speaker.
What's your point of order, honorable member?
We're asking you to protect her. It's a maiden speech.
Honorable member.
Please protect her, and you are not doing that.
Honorable member, you raise point of orders in the middle of her presentation yourselves.
No.
Just like all other members are raising points of order.
No,
The rules require that we must listen to anybody in the House who raises a point of order. She's no different. A point of order is raised in the House, it must be listened to. We can't assume that it can't be said. Please take yourself, allow her to proceed.
Deputy Speaker, a point of order is called of people who are doing something in the gallery. You have not seen them yourself. You call them to order.
Honorable
you have
member.
not seen what she's talking about. Instead of telling her to sit down so that you protect the speaker, you sustain her.
I'll
order.
invite you in
Please
future,
protect her.
Honorable Malem, I'll invite you in future to help me make orders in the House. Not today. Honorable member, proceed.
Today, Thandi is excluded from Rhodes University for protesting against rape culture. Thandi is financially excluded from completing a qualification because your NSFAS did not pay for her last year of study. Thandi was turned back from a clinic because of shortage of contraceptives. Thandi then fell pregnant and was again turned back from hospital because the waiting list for abortion services can stretch out to over 5 months. Thandi is now the 1 in 4 women who will live in absolute poverty for the rest of her life for having kept a baby she did not want and couldn't prevent carrying because of your government, Mr. President. Thandi is one of the 1,200 young women who got infected with HIV today, despite numerous global efforts available to prevent this from happening and your failure to have it accessible for Thandi in Taung. Thandi was protesting outside Parliament demanding health rights for her fellow domestic workers a few days before your address, Mr. President. Thandi is on Nyaupe, and she will commit suicide before the new dawn because of depression. Thandi is also landless. Thandi is a rape victim living with her rapist in the same house because your police officers lost the docket. Thandi is unemployed and will remain unemployed for the next decade because you, Mr. President, cannot cater for her needs in your job creation plan that rules out 80% of unemployed young people for the next decade. All these social ills and failures of your government reproduce the kind of violence our country is associated with today, and you have not the slightest idea of how to resolve this. Let us therefore tell you what you should consider once again. The state must ensure 50% women representation in all spheres, representing economic benefit, political participation, managerial and leadership responsibility. The state must introduce compulsory gender education and training for all, from school level up to the highest level of all public services. The state must introduce compulsory education of police on gender justice and establish specialized law enforcement units to deal with women-related crimes. The time for meaningless frameworks and commissions on the gender question has long expired, Mr. President. Introduce a special inspectorate in the Department of Labor to monitor, report, and enforce gender parity and equality in the workplace. Don't just talk decriminalization of sex work if you do not mean it. Stop unfair discrimination against LGBTQI individuals when they want to adopt children in need. Decommodify basic needs such as education and health so that they are driven by need and not maximization of profit. Your focus on health should be on primary health with commitment to attainment of universal healthcare coverage, quality clinics with strong immunization and vaccination programs, prevention, promotion, and education-oriented primary health care. Protect and promote informal traders and allow them to trade in the streets of Braamfontein, Sandton, Hatfield in Pretoria, Sea Point in Cape Town, and taxi ranks where women vendors get threatened with rape every day. And lastly, Mr. President, lastly, if you are unable to do all of these things, move over and allow Thandi and other fellow young people to wake up South Africa from this nightmare you have collectively subjected us for the past 25 years.
Honorable Zungula.
That is what you wanted to prevent, the best addressed thus far.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable President, people of South Africa, you deserve better. You deserve servant leadership. When you voted on the 8th of May, you were hoping that your own dreams would be finally realized. we are hoping that the much vaunted new dawn would indeed live to aspirations as articulated in the Freedom Charter. Instead, last Thursday, you were presented with a dream of an individual. This dream did not represent a relief from your lived experiences of sharing water with animals. Kucacile umongameli unilibele bantu baseXholobeni, bantu baseSikhukhune, bantu baseMkhanyakude. All he dreams of now are what matters to the rich and affluent. High-speed trains and smart cities not even built by South Africans, but built in China. Last Thursday, we hope the president would account on the past 18 months he has been in office. Instead, he pretended he was not second in command of the previous administration. The true SONA that should have been tabled is as follows. The 3.2% decline in GDP is the biggest quarterly contraction in 10 years. All major sectors reported a negative growth. Despite having a pro-big business legislation, major companies like Naspers will be dual listing. Unemployment rate, including discouraged work seekers, is sitting at 38%. Businesses are shedding jobs as we speak. The government continues to support big businesses whilst neglecting SMMEs who've proven all over the world to be job creators. The role of government, it is not to create jobs, but to create an enabling environment for business to thrive and create jobs. Mr. President, exempting SOCs from the PFMA as well as the PPPFA will make them even more agile and competitive. Repealing PPPFA will enable more entrants and boost development of the SMMEs. Amending Section 25 to enable expropriation without compensation will unlock more land to be used for public good. 57 murders a day and having a gender-based violence rate that is 4 times higher than the global average is not acceptable. Mongameli, uthuleleni omama nabantwana besifa. Because our crime rate is almost the same as war-torn countries like Afghanistan. The President, we as the ATM are saying you need to employ all of the police reservists to boost capacity as well as police visibility. We need more action, less plans and summits. In conclusion, a president that has zero tolerance for crime against himself personally, guarded by snipers and machine guns, but is willing to wait 10 years to halve violent crime against his own citizens, is a self-centered president who's not putting South Africa first. Mongameli, uthuleleni abantu besifa.
Honorable Gigi Hilui.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. As this is our first debate since the election, let me begin by congratulating Mr. President on your election as President of the Republic. I'm sure the President dreamed, fond as he is of dreaming, of beginning his first full term in office in more favorable conditions. But the last decade under this government means that we meet today in this chamber at a time of great national anxiety. And no amount of presidential fantasy can mask the harsh economic facts that we must now face together as a country. The haze of Ramaphoria has given way to the sober reality of what we face. Years of excess and sin, spending, debt, and corruption have all caught up with us now. The cupboard is bare. There is no more money. Our national debt has never been higher. And millions of people in our country are desperately worried about how to get work or whether they will still have a job at the end of the month. They worry what will happen to their life savings, how they will pay their bills, and what the future holds for their children. To the President, the last 10 years is just a lost decade. But to the country, it's an entire lost generation of unemployed young people. A moment like this requires bold and decisive leadership. It is one thing, sir, to lift the national gaze with a vision of the very distant future. And it was absolutely right to focus the attention of the country on the urgent need for faster economic growth. But unless that is matched by a real commitment to make the difficult choices to actually achieve growth, then it's all just empty words. It's easy to speak of growth and jobs. President Zuma did that in his first SONA in 2009 and nearly every SONA thereafter. But if you say we're going to obsess about growth, then you must also commit specifically, by name, to stopping all of the growth-killing policies that your government is responsible for. If you say you are committed to responsible economics, then you need to commit explicitly to debt reduction. If you say you've got a plan for Eskom, then you had better tell the country exactly what it is. If you say that yours will be a government of doers, then you better stop promoting all of the takers. Dreaming has its place, sir, but it is no substitute for real action. And there was precious little of that in Thursday's address. And so the central question I was left from your speech is this: why could you not make one single concrete announcement? Not one. The answer is this: there is no agreement in your party about a focus on growth, is there? There's no agreement on responsible economics. There's no agreement on what to do about Eskom or reducing debt or the public wage bill. There is no consensus in the governing party about any of the major questions facing our economy. Far from it. The truth is, this president is in office, but he is not in power. Sir, it is easy to call. It's the truth. It is easy to call on the courage of citizens to endure the hardships they must currently endure. But where is your courage in matching dreams with tough action? Don't talk to us about courage, show it yourself. You cannot go on forever, Mr. President, finding a messy compromise in every problem, leaving everyone guessing as to what you really think, and telling everyone what they want to hear. It's time that you stare down the enemies of growth. Mr. President, you do not make a crocodile a vegetarian by feeding it more meat. Every time you compromise with the looting, lunatic left, you just embolden them even more. And one day, when you've compromised everything away, they will come for you. They are not your friends. They are not the friends of South Africa. They are a danger to this country. And it's time that you call them out. It's time that you show that you are prepared to make the tough decisions necessary to achieve growth. If you are really committed to growth, here are a few things you can do in your reply tomorrow. They're not difficult. Get rid of your 17 priorities and 15 goals and consolidate them all into one: economic growth above all. Open the way for metros to purchase electricity from whoever they want. Scrap the carbon tax, for it is nothing more than a manufacturing tax. Make clear that there will be no more money for SAA. Make clear your opposition to the nationalization of the Reserve Bank and the prescription of assets. If you do these few things, you will show that you meant what you said. But if you do not, then we can only conclude that you are in thrall to your political paymasters. So while it's very difficult to know where you stand, sir, it is absolutely clear where the Democratic Alliance stands. The enemies of growth have lost the economic argument completely, but still they continue to dominate the debate. Everything they propose, everything, has failed everywhere it has been tried. It is time that we took control of the economic argument. We are the only party with the ideas and the sound economic principles that will deliver a future of broad prosperity for all. We are determined that the cruelty of poverty can be eradicated from our society. That is our highest ambition and our sole obsession. The only way to eradicate poverty and build prosperity is to grow the economy faster, through policies which unleash enterprise and individual aspiration. We are committed to fiscal responsibility as the foundation of economic growth. And we know that millions of South Africans depend on public services, and that precisely because so many depend on those services, they need to be well funded and well run. And we recognize that without growth, government has no money to spend on the poor. You do not sustain a country on debt, only on investment and savings. So to grow, we must have policies that support the risk takers, policies that recognize that entrepreneurs create jobs, not government, policies that support private ownership, uphold the rule of law, reject narrow protectionism, and embrace the global market. That is where we stand, sir. That is what sets us apart as the party of jobs, of growth, and of broad prosperity for all. And we are keen for a fight. I want to tell the ANC and their other branch, the EFF, that we in this party find it obscene that millions of young people can't find work because of your bad ideas. You are clutching to the sinking wreckage of a failed statist ideology, and you're threatening to take the whole country down with you. Not on our watch. We love South Africa too much to let you drag us all down with you. So, we will fight your failed ideas that have got us into the mess we now face. We will defend the independence of the Reserve Bank, and we will protect the retirement savings of ordinary, hardworking people. This will be the defining fight of the next 5 years, and we are ready to make our case with growing confidence and vigor. It is time for the rational center of South African politics to dominate the economic debate, and to stand up for what works and for what is right, and to beat back these enemies of growth, whether they be here or there. And if you're not prepared to do it, Mr. President, then we will.
Honorable Karim.
Deputy Speaker, comrades, President and Deputy President, comrades and friends. So the opposition party insists that the President's SONA
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
is...
Yes, Honorable Singh.
I'm rising in terms of Rule 14S. Is it not an appropriate time for us to adjourn for lunch because it's 1 o'clock?
I keep the time, sir. Thank you very much. I will let you know when you must go and eat, Honorable Singh.
Deputy Speaker.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to second that motion.
The decision was not placed on the order paper. It's rejected. Go ahead, Honorable Karim.
I take it you haven't extracted any time from me over those superficial interventions, right? Okay.
Go ahead.
So here we
Watch
are.
your clock.
You're saying as opposition parties that it's high on detail, high on vision, low on detail. But one could argue better that
Yeah,
than
you are screaming, honorable
high,
members. Allow the member to speak.
high on detail and low on vision. Because, President, if you had presented a shopping list, as it were, they would have attacked the SONA just as much. They would have said, you see, these are empty promises. It's a shopping list. Where's the capacity to deliver? So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. But that's how most of the opposition parties, regrettably, operate in our parliament. It is endless, rampant opposition for opposition's sake. No recognition here that despite our many differences, we do have a common national interest, and never more than now with our faltering economy, our job challenges, and our increasing inequalities, as the SONA openly and frankly admitted. We need each other, in the interests of mainly the poor and the disadvantaged, but in the interest of all of our people. This is the main message of the presidency's SONA. It has been there since last February that we need partnerships of government, parliament, the trade unions, business, civil society, and the public generally to foster economic growth, create jobs, reduce inequalities, and consolidate our democracy. It's about a social compact. It's about creating social cohesion and working together. Never mind our entrenched differences. And if you want to get the cooperation of other political parties and other public stakeholders, you cannot spell out an over-detailed set of targets and then ask people to join you. In part, it's this that underpins the SONA. It has to convey, it's meant to convey a vision, especially of the first of SONAs in a new term of parliament. It is in this sense of a heightened vision that the dream term was used. It was to convey hope and to point to the enormous potential of this country, President, which we agree with. And it was said at the very end of a very long speech. In fact, it occupies less than 6% of the speech as I know it. Yet the opposition parties pounced on that minority section of the speech and ignored the detail that was spelled out. And the details have come, and they will come. They've come today in the minister's inputs. They will come in the budget debates. They will come when the MTSF is more clearly spelled out in a month or so, as Minister Mthembu explained, and they will come through our Parliament's effective oversight over the executive. If there are not enough detail and timeframes, then it is our responsibility as Parliament to ensure this within the next 3 months or so. If then it's not there, then we, not the executive, will be held to account. When it comes to the details of SONA, opposition parties say they're not new. Of course, not all of them are. That's because the president didn't start with his SONA address last week. It started in February 2018. There have been 3 SONAs since then, and there's certainly been progress. Let's start with some of this. Firstly, staring at us in the face daily, even on a Saturday, is the Zondo Commission. And whatever you say about that commission, it's very, very rare, even in established democracy, let alone a developing democracy, that a party which is facing the most contested elections ever allows the Zondo Commission to go ahead, revealing mainly regrettably, our dirty linen in public, and yet 57.5% of the people voted for us. There is also another commission on the PIC, the Justice and Party Commission. There is also the Mahoro Commission that led to the removal of 2 very controversial people in the National Prosecuting Authority. There's the Nugent Commission that has led to a credible SARS commissioner. There is, of course, the investment conference of last year where you reported that 250 billion of the 300 billion has actually been implemented or is beginning to be implemented, and so on and so on. I identified, for what it's worth, 19 targets you had, President, and timeframes, and others will spell that out. Do we need more details? Yes, Comrade President, as Parliament we do. In order for us to exercise our effective oversight, President, we have to have your ministers, the ministers of our country, spell out in the budget votes what they're going to do precisely so we can hold them to account in the interest of a Parliament that's in the best traditions of the National Democratic Revolution, a national democratic Parliament, Parliament as a tribune of the people, Parliament as an organ of popular power, which is what the ANC spelled out in 1994. Now the President is accused of being a dreamer. But who are the off-the-rail dreamers? Who are the real biggest dreamers? It's the DA and EFF, of course. The DA was dreaming a fantasy, Mr. Lewis, a fantasy that you are going to run Gauteng, either as a majority or in alliance with others, and Northern Cape. And oh man, in your worst fantasy, Mr. Lewis, in your worst fantasy, you actually thought you might even run the country as part of a coalition. And where are you now? You've fallen flat. I can't even see you. I hear the noise, but it's so much that. Noise, no substance. Let me also put it to you. In the real material world we live in, you lost 1.5% of your vote. Worse, you lost votes amongst the African constituency. So you know what? You have no chance of coming to power. Now, what is it? If you put together the ANC's 57.5% and the EFF's 10.2% or 7%, that means that we more or less 68% of the parties that have a substantial base amongst the African population. So what has changed since 1968? Nothing much, regrettably, President. We have a highly racialized voting pattern. It's not something to gloat about. This is not what the ANC wanted. But what it does suggest, Mr. Maimane, that your party has probably reached its ceiling. Frankly, you can go on dreaming if you think you're ever going to run this country. Dream on, I say. the ANC and other forces liberated you to dream. Thank us for that. And what about the other big DA dream? Their delusions in the free market and their disdain for the state. The country, despite the huge progress we've made, regrettably has the most acute income inequalities in the world. And regrettably further, it's highly racialized. Sadly, it's where it is. If we don't significantly reduce this, a social explosion is looming. Were it not for the intervention of the state, not least through our social grants program, and indeed our programs, we would all be swept away by this explosion, not least the EFF. Now the DA's dream is that privatization and the free market will prevent this. How? Just how, Mr. Lewis, is the DA's blind faith in the market going to address the highly racialized socio-economic challenges we confront? In no developing society in the world has the free market on its own reduced inequalities. Well, how do you think you're going to do it in South Africa? Now, even the DA's tentative edging towards a more state-oriented liberalism has caused huge ructions in the party and led partly to the reason why you lost your votes. Now, when we say to you, after I don't care, I'm here for what it's worth. Now, let me put to you, and hey, I served 25 years. 25 years. Why should I want to be back? Anyway, so I am, and you've got to deal with me, okay? So let me put this to you. No, let me put this to you, DA. You have an identity crisis. You don't know whether you are the party of Tony Leon's rampant free marketism or Colin Eglin's progressive, empathetic liberalism. You are divided, you are split. It's hilarious, Mr. Day-Lewis, that you say these things, because your party has no identity. You are ridden with angst and you have no future. And it wasn't just the DA. It wasn't just the DA that was dreaming, comrades, friends. It was also the EFF. We will win the elections, they kept saying. When we take over in 2019, May elections, we will do this and we will do that. Well, what happened? The reality is they could muster only a 2.5% increase over their 8.2 result in the 2016 local government election. Now get the math right. You have so many PhD people.
Point of order.
They are only 40% away from being a majority.
What's your point of order?
It's unparliamentary to deliberately mislead the House about the losses of the ANC and the gains of the EFF.
If you
Look at the benches, brother. Don't be overwhelmed by your ego.
Honorable member.
That's why you are in the NCOP and not
Honorable
in here.
member.
That's fine. Because
Honorable
they lost.
Honorable
Next is old age home.
Honorable Ndlozi. Honorable Ndlozi. Order. Honorable Ndlozi, you can't say a member is deliberately misleading. That's unparliamentary, and you must withdraw it. Withdraw it. You know that. You know the rules.
I withdraw that he's deliberately misleading the House.
Unconditional, honorable member.
I unconditionally withdraw and sustain the old age home destination. That is your destination.
Honorable Ndlozi, can you kindly please withdraw unconditionally?
I kindly please withdraw and sustain
honorable
the
member,
age destination.
Honorable member, this is the last time. Withdraw, please.
Didn't I do that? I withdraw.
Okay. Thank
Are you
very
happy,
much.
brother?
Withdraw. Take your seat.
Well,
go ahead, honorable member.
Yeah, it's not an attack on me, it's an attack on the IEC. These are their results, right? So, if the DA dreams about the free market, the EFF dreams about an all-powerful Father Christmas state that will deliver everything and anything to everybody overnight. And let me tell you, it's not simple Mao suits of the 1960s they want for all. It's Louis Vuitton red overalls. Nationalize, they say. Nationalize, and hey presto, everything gets solved. Now, this is idealism of the worst sort. The EFF claims to be Marxist. Where is the historical materialism? No assessment of the historical juncture, of the concrete economic and political terrain, of the domestic and global forces, balance of forces, of the strength of the state, of the readiness of the working class and its allies for socialism. And where exactly is the EFF socialist struggle working class base? Where's the trade union movement? Where's the workers? Where in the world? When did Lenin and Marx say it is the youth that will be the revolutionary motive force for socialism? Not Lenin, not Marx, and not the other great hero. The great Franz Fanon never said that. So, why this youth fundamentalism? Everybody over the age beyond Malema's age is a reject, is a hack. Yet they admire China. What's the average age of the Central Committee or the government of China?
Point of order.
The EFF is voluntarist. The EFF.
What's your point of order, honourable member?
Can we ask this demoted member of parliament to say Honorable Malema? It's law here in parliament.
Okay.
Must respect us.
Mr. Malema is acceptable, Mr.
Please.
Malema.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right. All right.
The EFF is voluntarism with no foundation in materialism. This idealism, this voluntarism is closely linked to its populism. And this populism is closely linked to its militaristic posture. There is no armed struggle. We are a democracy. They're in parliament. Why do they have as the head a commander-in-chief? Where's the internal democracy? Who is he commanding? Towards what end? No clarity, right? He thinks,
Order, members.
He was too young to be in the armed struggle rightly. I have no doubt he would have taken part. But he thinks that if you fire a rifle in the air at the EFF rally, that makes you a soldier. Now, and the EFF, let me tell you, is all tactics and no strategy. Normally, your tactics, as we all know, and he knows, he comes from the national democratic tradition, Comrade Malema. Why is it that you don't accept this, please? You see, you have a strategy overall, and you subordinate your tactics to it. No. The EF is tactical. Everything is tactical. So they swing from one extreme to the other. Identity crisis. So one day they're opposing the public protector. Next day they're supporting the public protector. We know what's going on. One day they're opposing state corruption, or state capture, as we call it. Next day defending the perpetrators of that corruption. One day they're supporting. Look, for example, let me ask you, can you respond, Mr. Shivambu, when you speak? The state is weak. The state-owned enterprises are weak. Even the president and the minister of public enterprise says that. What sort of state is going to be able to take over property completely and disperse it, Mr. Malema? Let's engage around that. There's somebody else who's going to deal with the land issues. I've got only 254 minutes. So, you can be technically flexible, but it must be part of an overall strategy, right? Now, the EFF claims to be Marxist. In what sense, you can't tell. Like the DA, you two parties are the opposite sides of the same coin. Both suffering from an identity crisis. Both don't know where you're going because Mr. Zuma is not here anymore. Now, which is not to say, President, we don't have our own internal problems. It's there. Even the peasants in Outer Mongolia know it, and the frozen citizens of Alaska know it. And we have to do something, Mr. President. You and the Deputy President and the SG, wherever he is, I hope he's listening. Or at least somebody will convey it to him. Now, let me put this to you. We are a... No. Let me finish. I'm about to finish. You'll be rid of me. Now, look. We're a national liberation movement. We're not a typical party in a cohesive sense of DA and EF are meant to be. We are a broad movement of all classes and all strata of the population. And we're in alliance with the Communist Party, mercifully, President, and COSATU and SANCO. So it's obvious we can't be ideologically cohesive, Mr. Malema. You know that, in the way you could be and the DA could be. So what's your reason for not being ideologically cohesive? DA, I don't know, you're a party. But you know what? We respect the free market. The president has gone overboard, and the deputy president and the ministers. We believe the free market has a role to play. We are committed to the private sector. We're not frightening them away. It'll be foolhardy and anti-Marxist even, President, the General Secretary of the party in the other capacity, you'll agree. Now, look, we're saying we want a national democratic revolution, advanced, consolidated, and deepened. We want a national democratic society in which there's both the market and the state. That's why we reject some of what they say. Certainly everything they say and some of what they say. The market and the state, right? That's what we want, a cooperative relationship between them. And we are saying we can't do it on our own as the ANC. We need all of you, despite our differences, despite what I've said here, because I was provoked by Ms. Chirwa more than Mr. Malema. Mr. Malema, by the way, no, Mr. Malema, I was going to be very conciliatory, Mr. Malema, because I saw you on TV, and obviously I Googled you because I had to do the sweeping. You are very much more temperate today than you were in the media. But I can see now you put Ms. Chirwa to do the work, right? Now, as I know it, Mr. Malema, Mr. Shivambu, you're a chief whip of your party. As I know it, when I came in '94, a maiden speech, you don't interrupt, but in return, the maiden speaker...
Order, Deputy Speaker.
I've only got 13 seconds.
Order, Speaker. No, he must stop undermining women.
No.
Honorable Chirwa is capable of speaking in this
Honorable
parliament.
member, what's your point of order?
You must never undermine women, Chief. Please.
Honorable member.
Honorable Chirwa is better than you. That's why you got demoted.
Honorable
You got
member.
demoted by your own party.
Honorable member,
Stop
take your
that,
seat.
Chief.
Honorable member.
That's why you ran away from SSCP.
Honorable member.
I ran away from it.
Take your seat.
I remain a member of the Politburo. What's your problem? But you know you're not right. I mean, that's an outrageous thing to say. What I am saying is this. If you do a maiden speech, as I understand it, Deputy Speaker, you have to be temperate and you don't criticize too much in your first speech. Now, she did that, which is what was provoked. Isn't that
Honorable
the norm?
Karim.
Thank you very much.
Your time has expired, please. Honorable members, it's now time for you to go. Honorable Mwai, how can you be standing and drinking water like that? Honorable members, take your seats. You must follow the order. Please, some decorum is useful. Please, man, some decorum is useful. It's time for lunch. You will be invited back here by the bells when they ring, and please be in time so that we proceed with the affairs. Thank you.
Where's my pen?